Sarah Mitchell, a 26-year-old daughter from a wealthy American family, has always been the black sheep, criticized, mocked, and treated as a disappointment during every family gathering. At a Thanksgiving dinner, her parents and siblings publicly humiliate her one last time, announcing they're cutting her off completely. What they don't know is that Sarah has been secretly building a multi-million-dollar tech empire under a pseudonym. When the truth finally comes out, the family that expelled her discovers they've been living off the success of the very daughter they rejected. A story of hidden triumph, sweet revenge, and the power of proving everyone wrong. The crystal chandelier cast harsh shadows across my mother's perfect dining room as I sat at the far end of the mahogany table, exactly where they always placed me, as far from the family throne as possible. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 26 years old, I had become an expert at swallowing humiliation with my mother's overpriced wine. The familiar knot in my stomach told me tonight would be different, though I couldn't have imagined how different. Sarah, darling, my mother, Patricia, began with that saccharine tone that always preceded public execution. We've been discussing your situation. She gestured vaguely with her manicured hand, diamonds catching the light like tiny weapons. My father, Richard Mitchell III, cleared his throat importantly. He owned 3 luxury car dealerships across Connecticut and never let anyone forget it. Your mother and I have made a decision about your future, Sarah, or rather, your lack thereof. My older brother James smirked from his privileged position at Dad's right hand. At 29, he had inherited the golden child status along with his trust fund and complete inability to manage money. This should be good, he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. My younger sister Madison, 23 and fresh from her 3rd attempt at college, giggled into her wine glass. She'd been living off our parents' generosity while pursuing what she called finding herself, which apparently required a new BMW and monthly shopping trips to Manhattan. The Thanksgiving turkey sat between us like a dead witness to years of family dysfunction. The irony wasn't lost on me that they'd chosen this day, a holiday supposedly about gratitude, to deliver whatever blow they'd been planning. "We're cutting you off," Dad announced, his voice carrying the same tone he used to fire employees. "Completely. No more money, no more bailouts, no more enabling your artistic pursuits." The word artistic dripped with disdain. For 3 years, they'd watched me struggle with what they assumed was a failing graphic design business, working from my tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn. They saw the modest clothes, the old laptop, the careful budgeting. What they didn't see was the empire I'd been building in secret. "Richard, tell her about the apartment," Mom prompted, dabbing at her lips with the cloth napkin. "We're selling your grandmother's brownstone," he continued, referring to the small property in Brooklyn where I'd been living for practically nothing. "The one you've been using as your little art studio. Market's good right now, and frankly, we need real assets, not charity cases." The room fell silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for tears, begging, the usual desperate response they'd come to expect from the family disappointment. Instead, I took a slow sip of wine and smiled. "Is that all?" I asked calmly. James leaned forward, confused by my lack of hysteria. "Don't you understand? You're being disowned. No more family money. No more safety net. You'll have to get a real job. Or," Madison added with fake concern, "move back to Mom and Dad's basement like other failed millennials." I set down my wine glass with deliberate precision. "Actually, I have a confession to make." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. My father's face darkened. "If you're about to announce another one of your disasters, Sarah, I don't want to hear it." "Oh, but you do," I said, standing up slowly. "You really, really do." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Not the modest checking account they'd seen me use for years, but the real one. The one connected to Mitchell Holdings LLC, the company I'd built while they thought I was playing with colored pencils and dreams. "I am Mitchell Holdings," I announced, turning the screen toward them. The balance read $47,000. Have you ever watched someone's world collapse in real time? It's fascinating. James dropped his fork. Madison choked on her wine. Mom gripped the table so hard her knuckles went white. "But Dad?" Dad laughed. A harsh, disbelieving sound that echoed off the walls. "That's obviously fake," he said, but his voice wavered. "Some app you downloaded to make yourself feel better about being a failure." I scrolled to the transaction history. The graphic design business? That was just my cover story. I've been developing and selling software applications since I was 22. 3 exits, 2 acquisitions, and 1 IPO that made me more money in a day than your dealerships make in a year? The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. What would you do in my position? When the people who were supposed to love you most had spent years grinding you down, only to discover you'd been soaring above them all along? If you've ever felt underestimated by your own family, you'll want to hear what happened next. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss how this story unfolds. Because what I revealed next made them realize they hadn't just been wrong about me. They'd been living a lie that was about to destroy everything they thought they knew about their perfect family. The sound of my mother's wine glass hitting the marble floor and shattering seemed to echo for hours. Red wine spread across her pristine white carpet like blood at a crime scene. "You're lying," James whispered, but his voice had lost all its earlier arrogance. "There's no way you live in that tiny apartment, you drive that beat-up Honda?" The Honda was part of the cover, I explained, enjoying every second of their confusion. Hard to maintain the struggling artist image while pulling up in a Tesla. Though I do own 3 of those, along with the Porsche and the vintage Mustang Dad always said I'd never be able to afford. I walked around the table slowly, letting them absorb the magnitude of their mistake. You want to know the really beautiful part? Every time you called me a disappointment, every family dinner where you made jokes about my little hobby, I was closing million-dollar deals. But the money, Dad's face had gone pale. When you asked for help with rent that one time, I never asked for help with rent, I corrected. I asked if I could borrow $50 for groceries because my bank account was temporarily frozen during a major acquisition. You gave me a 20-minute lecture about financial responsibility while I was literally waiting for a $12 million transfer to clear. Madison was scrolling frantically through her phone. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Sarah Mitchell, Emerging Tech Entrepreneur of the Year. Forbes 30 under 30. How did we not know?" "Because you never bothered to Google your own daughter," I said simply. "Too busy assuming I was a failure to actually check if your assumptions were correct." Mom finally found her voice. "Sarah, sweetheart, if this is true, why didn't you tell us? We could have helped, been supportive." The laugh that escaped me was sharp enough to cut glass. "Supportive? Like when I showed you my first app design and you suggested I pursue something more realistic? Or when Dad told his golf buddies that I was the family charity case?" I pulled out a folder I'd been carrying, one they'd assumed contained more of my childish drawings. Instead, I spread out printed screenshots of bank statements, business articles, and acquisition announcements. Mitchell Holdings owns majority stakes in 7 companies. We employ over 400 people across 4 states. Last quarter, our revenue was $23 million. I looked directly at my father. Your 3 dealerships combined didn't even hit $8 million last year. James was staring at the papers like they might bite him. But you said you needed the brownstone apartment because it was cheap." "I bought the brownstone," I revealed. 6 months ago. Through a shell company. Grandmother left it to me in her will, but you all convinced her I couldn't handle property ownership, remember? So she left it to the family trust instead. The color drained from Dad's face. "You own?" "I bought it from you. Well, technically, my investment firm bought it from the family trust for $2.3 million, about $800,000 over market value. I figured you could use the extra money, given that I've been monitoring your financials." The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop in Connecticut from 3 states away. "Monitoring our—" Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "Did you think I'd let my family struggle while I was building an empire?" I asked. "Even after everything, you're still my family. That mysterious anonymous buyer who purchased all of James's bad debt last year? That was me. The private investor who bailed out Madison's credit cards without telling her? Also me. James looked like he'd been hit by a truck. The debt collector said it had been transferred to a new company and forgiven. Mitchell Holdings Debt Recovery, I confirmed. We specialize in helping families get back on their feet, especially when one family member has been secretly cleaning up everyone else's messes for years." Madison was crying now, but I couldn't tell if it was from shock, shame, or relief. "Sarah, we had no idea." "You had every opportunity to have an idea," I said, my voice growing colder. "But you were all too busy looking down on me to look at what I was actually doing." Dad stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. "If you're so successful, why are you here? Why subject yourself to this?" I smiled, and I knew it wasn't a kind expression. "Because tonight was my graduation ceremony. From caring what you think to owning my truth completely. I gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. Oh, and about that trust fund Madison's been living off? The one James has been dipping into for his gambling debts? The one you've been using to maintain this lifestyle while your businesses slowly fail? The look of growing horror on their faces was almost artistic in its symmetry. The family trust has been hemorrhaging money for 2 years. You're about 6 months away from bankruptcy. But don't worry, I've already arranged to purchase all the family assets through various holding companies. The house, the cars, even Dad's precious dealerships. What do you think they deserved after years of treating their own daughter like a charity case? Some might say I went too far. But after what you're about to hear next? Don't forget to subscribe if you're invested in this story, because the final revelation I'm about to share will show you exactly why I'd been planning this moment for 3 long years. The real reason I built my empire in secret wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about protecting something they never knew existed, something that would change our family forever. The grandfather clock struck 9 as I delivered the blow that would reshape the Mitchell family forever. There's one more thing you need to know, I said, reaching into my purse. The real reason I built Mitchell Holdings wasn't just about proving you wrong. I pulled out a small leather journal, worn, familiar, filled with my grandmother's handwriting. Mom gasped when she recognized it. Grandma Rose's diary, I explained. She left it to me specifically, along with a letter you never bothered to read. I opened to a page marked with a faded ribbon. She knew about my business from the beginning. In fact, she was my first investor. The shock on their faces was almost comical. Almost. Impossible, Dad stammered. Mother never had that kind of money to invest. She had $50,000 in a private account she'd been saving for years, I continued, reading from her precise handwriting. For my granddaughter Sarah, who sees the world differently and will change it someday. The others don't understand her gift, but I do. Mom's face crumpled. She never said anything. She tried to. Every family dinner, every holiday gathering, she'd ask about my work, and you'd all roll your eyes and change the subject. I turned another page. Listen to this entry from 2 years ago. Sarah's software company went public today. She's now worth more than the entire family combined, but still she sits quietly while they mock her dreams. My brave granddaughter, protecting us all from the truth of their failures. The words hit the room like physical blows. James was shaking his head in disbelief. Madison had buried her face in her hands. She knew about our financial problems? Dad asked, his voice barely audible. She knew everything. The gambling debts, the failing dealerships, the maxed-out credit cards. She also knew that if I revealed my success too early, you'd all come begging instead of learning to stand on your own. I closed the journal carefully. She made me promise to wait until you either accepted me as I was or cut me off completely. I looked around the table at my broken family. Well, you cut me off. Promise kept. Sarah, Mom pleaded, reaching toward me with trembling hands. We didn't know. If we had known. If you had known, you would have treated me differently for all the wrong reasons, I finished. You would have wanted the money, not the daughter. But here's the twist that even I hadn't seen coming. I pulled out one final document, a legal paper that would change everything. Grandma Rose left one more surprise. In her will, she established something called the Mitchell Family Trust, not the one you've been draining, but a real one. She left specific instructions. I unfolded the paper with deliberate slowness. Every member of this family gets a second chance, but only if they earn it. James, your gambling addiction ends now. Madison, your shopping and partying lifestyle ends now. Dad, your pride ends now. Mom, your enabling ends now. Their faces showed a mixture of hope and terror. Each of you gets a job with Mitchell Holdings, starting at entry level. You'll work your way up like everyone else. You'll learn the business from the ground up. And if you prove you can change, if you can become the family Grandma Rose believed you could be, then you'll share in the success I've built. I stood up, smoothing my dress. But if you can't handle being employees of the daughter you spent years calling a failure, if your pride is more important than family, then this is goodbye forever. The silence stretched like a chasm between us. Finally, James spoke, his voice broken. What would we be doing? James, you'll start in accounting. Time to learn how money actually works instead of just spending it. Madison, customer service. You'll discover what it's like to help people instead of just performing for them. Dad, you'll be a junior sales associate. Mom, human resources. Maybe you'll learn to see people for who they really are instead of who you want them to be. And if we say no? Dad asked quietly. Then you keep this house for 6 more months until the bank forecloses. You keep your failing businesses until they collapse completely. And you live with the knowledge that you threw away your daughter and your future in the same night. I walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and that brownstone you were going to sell? Grandma Rose's will specifies that it becomes a community center for young entrepreneurs if the family falls apart completely. She called it the Sarah Mitchell Center for Dreamers who are told they can't. The tears were flowing freely now from everyone except me. I'd cried all my tears years ago. You have 48 hours to decide, I said. Show up at Mitchell Holdings on Monday morning if you want to be part of this family's future. Don't show up if you prefer to remain part of its past. As I reached the front door, Mom's voice stopped me. Sarah, do you forgive us? I paused with my hand on the doorknob, considering the question that would define our family's future. Ask me again in a year, I said softly. After you've proven that the people who raised me to be strong were still inside you somewhere, just buried under years of disappointment and fear. I walked out into the cold November night, leaving behind the family that had expelled me and walking toward the future I'd built while they weren't looking. 6 months later, they all showed up for work. It took 2 years, but slowly we became the family Grandma Rose had always believed we could be. Have you ever had to choose between pride and love? Between being right and being whole? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of hidden success and family redemption moved you, subscribe to the channel for more stories about the power of perseverance and the courage to prove everyone wrong, especially the people who are supposed to believe in you most. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving your family wrong. It's giving them the chance to finally see you clearly and choose love over ego. The Mitchell Empire stands strong today, built not just on business success, but on the foundation of a family that learned to see worth beyond expectations and love beyond disappointment.